What is going on, Pats Nation? You guys already know who it is. Patriots Global here, back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to talk about a few different former New England Patriots players that are still on the free agency market that the New England Patriots could and should look to bring back. Now, this isn't, unknown by the New England Patriots. They do this several times where, they bring guys back who played for the team at one point to have another tenure with the Patriots. I mean, we've seen Jamie Collins, we've seen Patrick Chung. Most recently, we've seen guys like Malcolm Butler. So this is something that Bill Belichick is very open to doing and something that he actually does more often than not. At the end of the day, all of these guys on this list, they know the system. They're guys that you can plug in day one, and they know the system, they know the expectations, they know what to do. It's not going to have any learning curves or anything like that. So the first guy on this list, we've talked about him before. We've talked about him a couple times this offseason. Trey Flowers, still only 28 years old. He hasn't even hit that 30-year-old age mark yet. Still has a lot of football left in him. He's a guy that I could see wanting to reset that market. Played for the Lions after, a good stint with the Patriots, putting up an average of about 7 sacks per season with the Patriots, then goes and signs this big lucrative deal when Matt Patricia was with the Detroit Lions, and just doesn't show out. He shows out that first season putting up about 7 sacks for the Detroit Lions, but after that, only 2 sacks in 2020, 1.5 sacks in 2021, which ultimately led to his release. Now, I'm very surprised that Trey Flowers is still unsigned. Obviously, there's been a lot that's kind of happened within the front office of the Detroit Lions. They haven't been a good team for quite a while now. So I do believe that Trey Flowers is still a good football player. It's really just a situation that he's been put in. Maybe he's still looking for that big lucrative deal. Maybe not. I'm just surprised that there has not been more of a market for Trey Flowers. But this is the exact case that we've seen with players that come back to New England, is that they come back for 1 year. They signed on a 1-year contract, reset that market. They always play well in New England. They show out in that 1 year with New England. They hit the open market at the end of the season and sign a big lucrative contract somewhere else. I think that's the exact storyline you'd be looking here with Trey Flowers. He's making $1.6 million from the Detroit Lions already this year, despite him being cut. So, although the Patriots don't have a lot of money to go ahead and make big moves, I don't think they'd have to give Trey Flowers this big lucrative deal. I think that they could get more of a bargain deal from Trey Flowers to come in, reset that market. The Patriots are the best situation for him to reset that market, have a really good season, be a starting piece for this defense, and at the end of 2022, go ahead, hit the free agency market, and sign that big lucrative deal that you're looking for. This really is a win-win for both teams. Trey Flowers, again, resets that market, only a 1-year contract. He gets money from the Patriots while already making $1.6 million from the Detroit Lions. And as for the Patriots, they get that next edge rusher. I know we're talking about Josh Uche or Ronnie Perkins, but at the end of the day, we don't know if one of those guys is really going to show out and be that edge rusher next to Matthew Judon that the Patriots need so desperately. Trey Flowers plugs in and is easily that guy next to the opposite side of Matthew Judon, and you now have that 1-2 punch on both sides of your defensive line. Now, next up on this list is going to be the offensive line. Now, Nate Solder is a guy that we all know. He played in New England, being the starting left tackle, being the protector of Tom Brady's blind side for 8 years, from about 2011 up until about 2017. After that, we all know he signs this really big lucrative deal with the Giants in free agency of 2018. And unfortunately, he was just another one of those cases where he goes somewhere else other than New England, and he just does not perform as well. Now, look, he's 34 years old. There's not a lot left in the tank, but at the same time, because of that, there really isn't a market for him either. I honestly see, if no team signing him within the next few months, I really genuinely do see him retiring. But with all these kind of question marks surrounding the Patriots offensive line, they could use some familiarity there. Nate Solder's a guy who comes in, knows the system, knows what's expected, knows how to play this offensive line, can mentor, And I genuinely believe that you can get him for the veteran minimum, which is just a couple million. Tackle is the most important position on the offensive line and one of the most important positions in football, especially at left tackle, which is exactly where Nate Solder not just played for the Patriots, but played with the Giants. Currently, it looks like Trent Brown is going to be taking over that left tackle spot, but nonetheless, this is a guy who kind of had an up and down season the last couple of years, even last year in New England. And he's making that switch from right tackle to left tackle, which he hasn't played since his last tenure in New England. With that being said, too, Trent Brown does have a lot of injury problems, a lot of injury history, and the Patriots don't want to go back to a situation where you're having to sub in Justin Herron or, put Isaiah Wynn back there. You want to have as much familiarity along your offensive line as possible, and Nate Solder still has familiarity with some of the other guys on the O-line. The Patriots could definitely use depth at the tackle position along the offensive line. We do have some guys who could potentially fill that spot, but they're young. We don't know what we're getting from them. They might not even be ready to take over if Trent Brown nor Isaiah Wynn does go down. So somebody like Nate Solder could be a really good depth piece that you get for the bare minimum. Now, next up is another offensive line player. This one's going to be in Marcus Cannon, who the Patriots traded a little over a year ago to the Houston Texans. And this one is really similar to the Nate Solder situation, except it's not going to be for the same reason as depth behind Trent Brown. This is going to be more depth at right tackle. Marcus Cannon is a right tackle, and right now, your right tackle is Isaiah Wynn. We have never seen Isaiah Wynn play right tackle. The only time we have is the couple snaps that he had in the Eagles preseason game as a rookie in which he tore his ACL. So it could be an absolute trash show with Isaiah Wynn at right tackle. And again, I don't think that we have anybody that we can comfortably say can go ahead at right tackle and take over. There's also the potential storyline on, hey, the Patriots could potentially trade Isaiah Wynn if there's a good market for him. If they can get something valuable for Isaiah Wynn, New England could look to trade him, and then you need a right tackle. Now, at 34 years old, there's really not much left in the tank. He's not exactly a guy you want to be your starting piece for the entire season, but he's a good piece to mentor. He's a guy who knows what he's doing on the right side of the offensive line, helps with continuity, and can at least come in as a serviceable backup when needed. Now, next up is one that I probably like the most out of every guy on this list, and that's Danny Shelton. The Patriots need interior of the defensive line help a lot more than people give it credit for. They haven't been able to stop the run the last two seasons. Now, it did get better in 2021 compared to 2020, but very marginal compared to the moves that they made. Devon Godchaux really not holding up his end there as the Patriots' only true nose tackle, and they could really use, or be able to really rather, a big body guy that can come in next to Christian Barmore and stop the run. Now, in 2018 with the Patriots, he put up pretty good numbers, but he definitely had a better second season with the Patriots. In his second season with New England, he was more of an all-around player, as where in his first season, he was a little bit more one-dimensional. But Danny Shelton's game really is to stop the run. This is a big body guy. This is one of the biggest interior defensive linemen you're going to see, and that's why he put up an overall grade of 73.3 in his first season with New England, with a run defensive grade of 72.8 and a pass rush grade of 62.9. Now, if you flash that forward a little bit to the 2019 season, where the Patriots had one of the best defenses we've seen, he put up an overall grade of 72.3, a run defensive grade of 68.2, and a pass rush grade of 73.5. Now, unfortunately, he decided to then go from the Patriots to the New York Giants, and as we always see, guys who perform well with the Patriots go somewhere else in free agency, they don't play well, especially when it is a terrible team, in this case, the Giants. He put up an overall grade this past season of 45 with a run defensive grade of 43.4 and a pass rush grade of 59.4. I really do believe that his best time in the NFL was with the Patriots, because the Patriots actually knew how to utilize him unlike these other teams like the Cleveland Browns and especially the Giants. Now, I will say, I do think part of why his grades were so low this past year was because he only played about 29% of the defensive snaps in just 13 games with the Giants. He's only 28 years old, guys, so he is still technically in his prime. He does still have some football left in him, and at the end of the day, the Patriots need a guy who can come in and plug the middle, can really help stop the run, because they just do not have that right now. They need a true and pure nose tackle, and that's the problem. They don't have that. At the absolute least, he's going to come in and serve as a very serviceable backup, depth piece, and rotational piece. And this guy's definitely not going to have a market. Another person you can get for just a couple of million who you can sign to a one-year deal. Now, next up here is one that, we've talked about for so long, because as Patriots fans, we just want to see it, and that's Danny Amendola. Now, look, he's 36 years old. Because of that age, it just seems pretty impossible that a team is going to go ahead and actually sign Danny Amendola. I just see him retiring at this point. It also seems like it's not really a match made in heaven, just because of some of the issues he's had with Bill Belichick since leaving New England, playing for the Dolphins, playing for the Houston Texans, playing for the Lions. But we do know that when he was released from Miami a couple of years ago, there was interest between the two on a reunion. Now, despite his age, Danny Amendola would give something to the Patriots that they don't really have, and that is a true slot receiver, a quick-footed, short area quickness slot receiver. Back to your Julian Edelman-esque, Wes Welker days. Really, the Patriots over the last couple of decades have really had that pure slot receiver, that quick-footed slot receiver that they could have in these matchups. And I feel like the Patriots finally have two good tight ends. They finally have an ex-receiver in Devontae Parker, but unfortunately, they don't have that true slot receiver. And that's one thing they're missing, and Danny Amendola could come in and serve as that one missing piece that the Patriots have. Now, look, he's not in his prime. He's not going to be what he used to be, but I still think that he can come in, especially a guy that knows the system. The system knows how to use him, and I definitely think that he could still be productive. I know there's still a lot of guys on this depth chart, little Jordan Humphrey, Trey Nixon, Ty Montgomery. We can go on and on and on. Tyquan Thornton, who they just drafted. But you look at all these receivers, and none of these receivers are the same playing style of Danny Amendola. Next up here is Dante Hightower, and I'm not going to spend too long on this one because I made a whole video talking about how the Patriots are interested still in Dante Hightower, so if you guys want to know all the details on that, go ahead and check out that video on my channel. But he's one of the greatest linebackers that this franchise has ever seen, and you know Bill Belichick is always going to be willing to bring back Dante Hightower despite how he plays. He's 32, though, and the real question is if he wants to play football or not. He's definitely taken a pretty significant step back over the last couple of seasons, especially this past year, and it just seems like he hasn't had much of a market, but on the field, off the field, he's still going to be a leader, a great locker room guy, which the Patriots could use, and they could still use a middle linebacker, thumping guy. Someone who can still teach these younger linebackers, because unfortunately right now the Patriots at that linebacker core don't really have that true veteran. They have Juwan Bentley, who I think you can say is starting to kind of fill that mold, but I would not confidently say that he is a pure, true New England Patriots veteran that you're 100% confident with in mentoring all of these young linebackers that the Patriots now have. Due to the fact that the Patriots openly are still interested in him is honestly a big reason he's on this list. Now, lastly, here's another linebacker, and that's Jamie Collins. Unfortunately, I just think that there is a scenario out there in which the Patriots add some type of veteran linebacker before the start of the 2022 season because of all of these young linebackers. Now, the Patriots wanted to get younger, wanted to get faster, they wanted to get more athletic, and they definitely did that. But the one thing is that you're now playing a lot of young guys who don't necessarily know the system yet, guys who don't have a lot of experience in the NFL yet. And that's just never really been Bill Belichick's cup of tea. Now, that's not to say he isn't going to play these young guys, because either way, he's definitely going to, but I could still see him wanting to add at least one true veteran linebacker to this core that can really help keep this position stable. Jamie Collins is another guy who's had multiple tenures with this team, even this past year, it being one. Unfortunately, this was the worst tenure back that we've seen with him with the Patriots, and one of the worst seasons we've seen, period. But I think that also comes back to the fact that the Patriots really never played him. They never really utilized him. I mean, he really only played in some sub packages and was only averaging about 20 snaps per game. If you want him to be an impact player, at the end of the day, you do still have to play him. Look, no one doubts that he took a step back. He's not the true impactful player he used to be, but just a couple of seasons ago in 2019, he was making huge strides, huge impacts with this defense. I do truly think that as a run defender, an edge setter, he can still make an impact. You just have to actually play him. But that is going to be it for today's video. That is a couple of guys the New England Patriots could still sign that are former New England Patriots players. What are your guys' thoughts on this? And is there anyone I didn't include in this video that you guys would have included? Let me know in the comment section below. Remember to leave a big like on this video and subscribe to the channel for all of your New England Patriots news. But like always, I appreciate you guys for watching, and go Pats.